mitzvah of Pesach Sheni is a reminder that no matter how difficult the situation is, and no matter how limiting the world seems to be on doing Torah and mitzvahs, and how many obstacles it is to try to give you and your family and your children the best opportunity to have a Jewish experience, that if you really come from the place of yearning that you want to observe the Torah and mitzvahs, and you feel bad that there's obstacles in this world materially, Hashem will provide you the opportunity to overcome those obstacles and do the mitzvahs the way they're supposed to be done.
Welcome to the Chavruta with Rabbi Levi Farkash, where we uncover the deeper meaning behind the Torah and the powerful lessons it holds for our lives today. We want to thank this week's sponsor, the Omni Agency, for their generous contribution to the Chavruta with Rabbi Levi Farkash. Please reach out to Menachem Farkash at 425-435-4286 for all your insurance needs. Thank you once again to Omni Agency. And now to this week's episode. There are moments in life when a person feels like they've missed their opportunity. They look back and think, I should have done better. I had my chance and I lost it. And once that feeling settles in, something deeper follows. Maybe it's too late for me. In this week's discussion with Rabbi Levi Farkash, we encounter a remarkable moment in the Torah. A group of Jews come to Moshe with a complaint. Why should we be left out? They had become impure and were unable to bring the Korban Pesach at the proper time. But instead of accepting their situation, they demanded another chance. And in response, something unprecedented happens. Hashem introduces a new concept in Torah, Pesach Sheni, a second opportunity. This raises a powerful question. If the time has passed, if the opportunity is gone, how is it possible to go back? And even more deeply, what does that mean in Judaism? In Judaism, it says it's never too late. As you listen to this episode, think about this. Where in your life have you already decided that opportunity is gone, that version of me is no longer possible? Because tonight we'll explore a powerful idea that in the Torah there is no such thing as being permanently stuck. There is always a path forward. There is always a second chance. Let's begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are back with another Chavruta learning. This week we are talking about Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, which is coming up this Friday, the 14th of Iyar, which is exactly a month after the first Passover, where we have another opportunity for those that could not fulfill the obligation during the first Passover, have the second and another opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of Pesach. And we're going to learn all about that and what is the practical ramifications for us here in 2026. And again, this is an amazing learning with the Jewish insights. We're going to jump right in. Source number 1 that tells us about the Pesach Sheni in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 4. These are God's appointed holidays which you shall designate at their appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th of the month in the afternoon, you shall sacrifice the Passover offering to God. On the 15th day of the month is the festival of matzahs. You shall eat matzah for 7 days. Says Rashi, what does it mean, a Passover offering to Hashem? It means offering a sacrifice called Pesach. Fast forward to the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, right? The Jews are now celebrating the Passover in the desert. It is the second year after leaving Egypt, and there's a little bit of drama. What happens? One of the legal requirements of offering a Passover sacrifice was that one had to be a state of ritual purity. A person who had come into contact with a corpse was not able to participate. On the 14th of Nisan, just before Passover, a group of people approached Moses with a serious complaint. We are ritually impure, they said. Why must we lose out? Right? There were men who were ritually unclean because of contact with a dead body and therefore could not offer the Pesach offering of that day. They approached Moses and Aaron and they said, we are ritually impure because we had contact with a dead body, but why should we be excluded from bringing offering to Hashem to God on this holiday like all other Jews. And Moses responds to them, wait, and I will hear what Hashem commands you. And God told Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel and tell them that any person who had become ritually impure via contact with a dead body, or it is far away, whether among you in future generations, shall make a Passover sacrifice for God. In the second month, on the 14th day in the afternoon, they shall offer it. They shall eat it with matzah and bitter herb. They shall not leave any leftovers by the morning, and they shall not break any of its bones. They shall offer in accordance with all the laws of the Passover sacrifice. So what happens? God tells Moses that there's going to be this introduction of an idea called the second Passover. It falls out exactly a month after the first Passover, the 14th of Iyar, and anyone who is not able to bring the first sacrifice on the 14th of Nisan can and must bring it on the second Passover on the 14th of Iyar. Right? Now, you don't have the details like cleaning the home for chametz and the holiday lasting 8 days, right? But you do bring the korban, you do bring the sacrifice, you eat it with matzah and bitter herbs. Yes, work is permitted. However, this is an opportunity for people that couldn't make it to the Holy Temple to now go and bring this sacrifice, right? And at the same time, that if you were far away from Jerusalem, by the first Passover, this gave you an opportunity to travel in the appropriate time and come and bring that second sacrifice. Now, the question is, who were the individuals that asked that there should be an opportunity for them to bring the paschal sacrifice even though they were ritually impure? So the Talmud here in source 3 offers 3 opinions. Source 3 says the Talmud, there were men who were ritually unclean because of contact with a dead body. Who are these people? Rabbi Yossi of Galilee says they were the pallbearers of Joseph's coffin, which accompanied the Jews in the desert. Right? Rabbi Akiva said, right, we know the famous story. It was a 139-year-old promise, right, that Joseph on his deathbed said that he wants to make a promise, a swear that they bring his body to the land of Israel. And these people were the pallbearers for that body and therefore were ritually impure, and they were the ones that wanted to celebrate and bring the paschal sacrifice. Rabbi Akiva said they were Mishael and Alitzaphan who brought Nadav and Avihu out after they were burned in the Holy of Holies, right? Remember last week we studied a phenomenal, inspiring insight about what happened with Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's 2 sons, that they craved spirituality, and so they passed away. Now, in this story, which happens this week's Torah portion, actually, Parshat Emor, we have individuals who they were carrying Nadav and Avihu's body, says the second opinion, and therefore they were the ones that were ritually impure and could not bring a sacrifice on the 14th of Nisan. And then comes the third opinion that says a regular case of individuals that were involved with burying a dead body. There was no, not Joseph, not Nadav and Avihu, just a story that happened with someone trying to bury a dead body, and they want to bring the paschal sacrifice. So the Rebbe goes on and says that how was the Pesach Sheni created? When the Jewish people left Egypt and celebrated Pesach in the desert, the rule was a Pesach sacrifice and the full program of the Seder only could be observed by those who were ritually impure. During this first Pesach in the desert, a group of people came to Moses and they said they were ritually impure. After having some contact with the corpse, they did not have enough time to go through the purification process and bring the paschal sacrifice, and therefore they cried and they asked, why should they lose out on the opportunity to bring the sacrifice that Hashem had asked the Jewish people to bring, or commanded the Jewish people to bring? And Moses replied by asking God what to do, and God said that he's going to create a second Pesach, a Pesach Sheni, in which those that were ritually impure by the first one can now have a second opportunity to do so. And what? Since then, right, every year on the 14th of Iyar, the Pesach Sheni, even in today's day, the current era where the temple no longer exists, right, it's a day that we still mark. We don't say Tachanun, and we consider it to be a very joyous occasion. And even though we already ate matzah during the Seder on Pesach, it is customary that we commemorate this day by eating matzah again on Pesach Sheni, highlighting this story. So now we understand a little bit about what the Pesach Sheni is, what the second Passover is, how it came about. Let's get a little bit more nitty-gritty on the details, and we could really have the beautiful insight, relevant insight about what the Pesach Sheni, what the message of Pesach Sheni brings. Says the Rebbe, what is the lesson we can learn from this? Where should I start from?
What's the lesson we can learn from this?
So what is the practical lesson? We don't have a temple, right? What is the practical lesson that we can learn from this incredible story about how the Pesach Sheni, how the second Passover came about? And says the Rebbe, let's first look at the way that they petitions and formulated their argument, their question. What did they say? They began by stating that they were ritually impure, and then continued to ask to be allowed to bring the Pesach sacrifice. It would seem more logical to reverse the order. First, they should have said that there's an obligation to bring the Pesach sacrifice, and then asked that a solution should be found, despite their being ritually impure, right? When the person wants something, or complains about an injustice, first they say what they want, right? And then they explain the problem is. In our case, what did the petitioners do, right? First they said what the problem was, and then they asked what they want, which is unique and interesting. There's a deep meaning here and a deep lesson to be learned from the way that they ask. The Pesach sacrifice is different from all other sacrifices, right? We know that there are three different types of sacrifices. Number one is the individual sacrifice that was brought to fulfill a personal obligation or a donation. Communal sacrifices brought on behalf of the entire people, right? A community sacrifice. And these were offered in the temple by representatives of the people as a whole. And number three was the Pesach sacrifice that was unique, that every single Jew was commanded to bring it all together at the same time and place, meaning that the Pesach sacrifice combines two qualities. On one hand, it's an individual responsibility, an obligation that each person had to bring. At the same time, it was also communal in the fact that everyone was commanded to do it at the same time, right? So we know that generally there was two categories of sacrifices. Number one was an individual sacrifice brought by individuals according to their needs, right? There was no specific time. Every time you needed something, right? Like, for example, a sin offering or a thanks offering, you brought it according to your own schedule, according to what happened to you. At the same time, there was communal sacrifices, right? That everyone had to bring a certain sacrifice at the same time, right? Like certain holiday sacrifices and Shabbat and whatnot. The Paschal sacrifice, right, combined these two ideas. On one hand, everyone had to bring it on their own. There was no representation, no representatives. The individual had to bring it, but at the same time, everyone had to bring it at the same time. So it was very, very unique. So this is what the petitioners, the complainers in the desert, this is what their question was. They are ritually impure as a result of contact with the corpse. God designed the world such that among a nation of millions of people, it is certain that people will die from time to time, right? That's just the natural progression of life. Upon reaching the age of 120 or however many years God grants them, the Jewish people are a large nation, blessed by God, and they're very, very numerous, and every single day new Jewish babies are born. But at the same time, it's impossible to say that there will not be a death, right? It's impossible to say that that there's going to be days without death. If so many people are being born and so many lives are being lived, eventually, right, people have to pass on as well. Therefore, what do the petitioners argue? That they are obligated to bring a Pesach sacrifice, yet they are impure. Meaning to say is that why did Hashem set up a system that inherently contradicts themselves? On one hand, Hashem says on the 14th of Nisan, everyone has to bring a Paschal sacrifice. You must, on the 14th. On the other hand, He also created the rules of spiritual purity that make someone impure from being in contact with a dead corpse. And it's inevitable, it's impossible to say that on the 14th of Nisan, no one's going to die. Right? So it's seemingly a flawed system. Seemingly, it's a catch-22. On one hand, everyone has to bring a sacrifice. On the other hand, it's impossible to say that people are not going to be ritually impure on that day. And what are they supposed to do? Right? It's a unique case. They argued we are ritually impure as a result of contact with the corpse, which is a natural part of life that Hashem orchestrated in the world. And they asked what they should do. You created the mitzvah of burying the dead, and you created life that people should eventually die as well. So why would you also create a mitzvah that requires you to be spiritually pure in order to perform, when at the same time we also have to deal with the dead? What's going on over here? So therefore, they didn't mention what they want, right? You would think it would be appropriate to say they want to bring the sacrifice, and then they have to say why not. No, they first mentioned their status of impurity because it was the whole point of the argument. That it's not that they were impure so they couldn't bring the sacrifice. That the way that Hashem orchestrated the rules and the laws of impurity made them impure, and for the future rest of the world, there's going to be people that are going to be impure. How does this make sense? How could you then go and tell us that we have to go bring a sacrifice? And so Hashem accepted the validity of their argument, and he said, you're right. It doesn't make sense that I could create a system in which people on a year-round basis will not have the opportunity to bring the Pesach sacrifice. And therefore, he created a new mitzvah. They earned a new mitzvah, and that mitzvah was the Pesach Sheni, the second opportunity to have the Paschal sacrifice. Oh, says the Rebbe, we could learn a tremendous lesson. Right? What's the lesson? Many people ask, Hashem demands the nation to be a holy nation, right? Distinct, recognizable from all the other nations. We act differently. We observe the Shabbos. We eat kosher. We have many, many, many unique and interesting mitzvahs. Yet Hashem has also put us in interesting circumstances and demands that we have to spend majority hours of our day that we should be able to work to provide a living in an atmosphere that conceals godliness and that creates a lot of opportunities for transgression and to go away from the path, right? Hashem didn't create the world and say, you have to be this unique nation and I'm going to give you the perfect setting to which to accomplish your goal, right? God demands that what? He created a world that we have to constantly conduct ourselves in the right way, with at the same time the pressure and the obligation to work and to be involved in a very material world that seems at times to contradict Judaism. And with this, Hashem answers that if you're living in a world and observing mitzvahs that seem to be very difficult, and even if there's a particular once-a-year mitzvah that we are prescribed from observing due to circumstances beyond our control, we won't lose out. If you really want to observe Torah mitzvahs, right? If you feel that you're so obligated, you're so connected, that you want to perform every mitzvah that Hashem set out for us, and you want to learn Torah, and yet you feel that the world is really so material and so limiting of God's revelations that it seems difficult. If you really want, Hashem will offer you, just like offering the Jews the Pesach Sheni, the next opportunity to observe the mitzvah of Pesach, another opportunity. So too, if it's really bothering you that you want to observe Torah mitzvahs, yet the world seems to be a limit on that ability, and if you cry out to Hashem and you say, Hashem, what's going on over here? Why did you create the world like this? Then Hashem's going to help you. And Hashem's going to help you that you should be able to overcome whatever obstacles are in your way. Right? And you know what? To the point that if Hashem has to innovate and create something completely new, like the mitzvah of the second Pesach, Hashem will do it for you too. If you really want, just like the Jews in the desert, they didn't complain about that they don't have the opportunity to do the mitzvah, but they complained that they had to take care of doing Hashem's mitzvah, taking care of the dead, that they had to become ritually impure to deal with the dead, which is what Hashem orchestrated to be, and that was an obstacle for doing the mitzvah. So the same way, if you don't complain to Hashem, I can't do mitzvahs. It's not that you can't do mitzvahs. Complain, Hashem, you created the world from a place that I have to be involved in materialism, and that materialism is an obstacle to the Torah mitzvahs. If you word it like that, which shows that what the real problem is not that you're having a hard time Torah mitzvahs. The hard time is that you have to do the way the world was created for you to do, that Hashem is going to go so far to remove those obstacles that even if it means creating a miracle, creating something out of nothing in order to help you, Hashem will do so. And so the message for us is that, right, when you sometimes think that you're unable to devote yourselves properly, to educate your children, prepare for a living, to prepare to live a proper Jewish life or study Torah due to worldly responsibilities, we should know it's an illusion, a fabrication of our negative inclination to just try to give the best excuse possible to not do Torah mitzvahs. To overcome the obstacle, we need to reach deep and affirm our convictions that it is unconscionable that we be left out of the rest of the Jewish people who are fulfilling God's mitzvahs. When we have this conviction, Hashem will say, oh, you know what? I'm going to provide you new opportunities. And that's the whole mitzvah Pesach Sheni, right? Mitzvah Pesach Sheni is a reminder that no matter how difficult the situation is, and no matter how limiting the world seems to be on doing Torah mitzvahs, and know how many obstacles it is to try to give you and your family and your children the best opportunity to have a Jewish experience, that if you really come from the place of yearning that you want to observe the Torah mitzvahs and you feel bad that there's obstacles in this world materially, Hashem will provide you the opportunity to overcome those obstacles and do the mitzvahs the way they're supposed to be done. If you feel that, for example, there's a financial limitation and restriction that you can't send your kids to a Jewish school, and you're coming at it from that angle of, this is the world, I'm going to do how it is, it's supposed to be. No, but if you really say, I want to give my kids a Yiddish education, and the problem is I have to go and work more hours and more hours to be able to provide it. If you come at it from the angle of, I really want, Hashem is going to allow you the opportunity to overcome and bless you with whatever you need to have that opportunity for Jewish education and whatever else you need in your life. So as you listen to this podcast and you hear this Torah message, think about a friend, an individual that could use this insight and to need that reminder that we have to commit ourselves to Torah mitzvahs even when the world seems limiting. Let them hear this insight, let them learn, and let them grow. Wishing everyone a happy Pesach Sheni. May we be able to overcome the true obstacle, and that is to really learn what is the right frame of mind to be, and that is Torah mitzvahs.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Chavruta with Rabbi Levi Farkash. Please subscribe to our episodes in your preferred podcast player, and also give us a rating so that we can continue to share these episodes with as many people as possible. Thank you so much, and see you next time.